Okay, Jennifer, are you there?
Yes, I am. Okay. Theoretically, that should not happen again.
Okay, thank you. All right,
I don't even know how to.
here we go. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're now live on YouTube. All right, we're on in three, in two, and one. Welcome or welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Tonight, we have the distinct honor and pleasure to be joined by Jenniffer Robinson, who, as I understand it, along with her other friend, who we'll get to in a few moments, is a blind film director. First of all, Jenniffer, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Perfect. Excellent. So, what I really want to learn from you in this interview is, as you know, I'm very interested in acting. I'm very interested in YouTube and being a podcaster myself. But what I really want to know is if you can walk through the life story of Jenniffer Robinson and talk to us about, the whole philosophy of your life and who you are as a person and how you became a director and really how all of that stuff works. All right. So your hour starts now, and we'll interject and we'll bring in Shay when we need to as it relates in the conversation. All right. So go right ahead.
Okay. Well, first, I'd start off by saying I would consider myself more of a filmmaker than specifically a director because I tend to have my fingers in multiple pots in the filmmaking process, producing, directing, um, music, film scoring, script writing, just kind of acting in front of the camera. The only things I don't really do is editing, and I don't do as much of the cinematography as I could. I am a mostly blind person, almost total, but not quite. I do have some small amount of usable vision, which has been in a slow decline since birth. My technical diagnosis, well, I self-diagnosis myself as having everything but the kitchen sink because, well, it would take me an hour just to list all the different clinical eye diseases I actually do have. But the most prominent of them is detached retinas. So we'll just pick that one for today.
Okay. All right. We'll go with that one. We'll go with that one. All right. So, growing up, I can tell that you clearly really, really enjoy talking to people. And what was your first experience, watching a film? What really, what was the first film you watched growing up?
My first film growing up. Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
I think I have some early childhood recollections of watching Christine, the Stephen King movie. I must have been about 4, 5, 6 at the time. But I mean, I watched normal TV shows that were actually for kids, like My Little Pony and stuff like that, of course, too. So I wasn't that weird of a kid. Um, as for when I actually started considering films, that is way later down the road. First, I was more of a story person. I wanted to be a writer, and I loved reading and stuff like that as a kid. I was absolutely not social. I was that shy kid who would hide in their room and read books. And when I was grounded, I'd get my library card taken away. But
Right.
then, you know, um, I think I started getting active in participating in stage and acting and stuff like that. I think my first notable thing I did was I was in a production of Phantom of the Opera when I was 12. I played Meg, so I only had a couple lines, but it was fun, and I really wish I was able to appreciate it more than I did at the time. But I really started to get into that whole style of life more in later junior high, early high school when I started to finally come out of my shell more. And by that point in time, I had shifted from stories to music, but I still had a love of telling stories and I still wanted to write, but music was my main passion at that point. And then it slid into theater. And after adulthood, that's when I started thinking film is actually really cool. I love actually telling these stories through this medium. When I got to get into college and actually have some experience in working on that. Um, I had helped out with my friend Chandra. She was majoring in film at the time, and she was making a student film called Vanished, and I decided I'd act in it since she needed actors and stuff like that. And so I just kind of really started to slide into that area of interest. And later, I started doing some behind the scenes stuff with working as a PA and doing audio stuff to help out with other film projects on campus. And I had already had some other experiences doing the backs background stuff in film in high school, but that was or not in film, sorry, in theater. I started a group of variety performers of blind students when I was at the deaf and blind school I attended when I was in high school. We called ourselves VIP, which stood for Visually Impaired Performers. We all thought it was a very clever name at the time, but we really just wanted to get out there and show that blind people are capable of doing more than just the expected, you know? We we do more than just sit around and bead or play music or whatever the stereotypes were of the time, you know? And so our goal was to try and show, hey, we can dance, we can act, we can do stand-up comedy. And so I started getting to that, and all sorts of other things got piled on with that. But then Chandra and I, we started working on making our business we're currently working on. It's called Kryodragon Productions, and it's basically a film and sound production company we're trying to put together where our motto is that we want to hire disabled first when we get to a point where we're able to actually pay people to work for us. We want the jobs to go to the disabled community before they go to the sighted because realistically, unless we do it ourselves, we have a huge struggle being put first. And so we wanted to be that group that does put disabled first. And under the Kryodragon Productions banner, we've made a few short films, mostly for the Easterseals Disability Film Challenge. And I'll talk more about that in detail in a bit. But do you have any questions for me before I get into that?
Sure, I know, absolutely. Really, really well done. And I really relate to everything you said. I too am, as you can tell, an introvert. Am now, always was, and always will be. And that's always how I am. And that's great. I totally understand the social awkwardness and the introvertedness. I totally embrace it, and that's totally fine. But I think, you said something interesting that really spoke to me when you said that you figured out that, film is actually kind of cool. Film is actually kind of interesting. It's an interesting way of telling the stories, right? So I relate to it in the sense that I also have to think that podcasting is also kind of an interesting way of telling a story. And there's certainly some parallels to podcasting and film. There's some similarity. We create things, but the interesting part that I do is that I also agree with you that we need to put disabled people first, and I'll unfold that in a minute because that was a very interesting statement that you're going to have to do a little bit more of an explanation for me about that. But I will say that it's all extremely fascinating to me. The reason why, as you saw really before we started talking here about why I am in particular so sensitive about making sure that we mute the right people and unmute the right people. It's because that I'm creating a product for the future, and I want people and we want people to be able to look back at this and to be able to get as much out of it as they possibly can, because that's the power behind film or YouTube or podcast, is that we're doing things now and we're doing things for tomorrow. And that's truly where the power lies, is that this is a forever experience. So I want to make it good, you know. But that's where it gets interesting. And the interesting thing that I do, that I think is interesting, is that I welcome the audience to come up to Zoom. Now, sometimes in my episodes, people do come into the waiting room. Other times, usually not, and that's okay. But I want people to understand that this is a very open place where you can come into the audience and watch and have an influence in what we do. So, yeah. You said that I'm not necessarily going to go in the order that you said them, because it's totally fine, but
Mhm.
you were all over the place with all the great stuff you said, which is great. But one thing that really spoke to me is you said that you want to hire disabled people, and you say your focus is disability first. So, really explain that in depth. How would that actually work properly? Because there's a right way to do that and a wrong way to do that. So how would that actually work? And let me know when you want to bring Shay into the conversation. But this whole disability first thing, let's unfold that.
Okay, so that's an absolute fair question to ask. And, I mean, I could see how a person would assume that I'm saying, oh, I'm just going to hire all my buddies no matter what their skill level is. But what I mean by that more is if a person comes to us with a disability and they ask for a job, or if there's someone I know with a disability, but a particular skill set that I need, even if I know a if I know sighted people are actually going to be applying, that I'm going to give that disabled person the benefit of the doubt and assume that they are just as capable of doing that job as the sighted person. I'm not going to sit there and say, okay, well, they could be a liability because of insert reason here. I will look at them first on their merit, and then I will look at their disability, not in the sense of, well, they have this disability, so they obviously can't, but more, I know they have this disability, so how can we work around that? And trying to hire as many disabled people in the staff as possible, basically to have an accommodating nature towards people with disability. Like, for example, the film project I'm working on now, um, I do know a few sighted people who could put together this particular prop that I'm working on. They're just as capable as this one person I do know that has a vision and hearing problem. But I am going to the hearing and vision impaired person first because, well, I know that they have trouble finding work in other areas. And so I went to them and I asked them, hey, are you willing to do this job for me? And if they said no, then I would go and ask the other sighted friends that I have if they can help me make this prop. I hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. Yeah, no, I totally do, and I totally do understand what you mean. The other trick though is to also figure out, and this I think is a very subtle thing, is that even though you want to hire people who are blind, which I agree with you, I completely agree with this whole philosophy. But also the trick is to hire people who are blind who truly are talented enough to
Yes.
to do the role justice. That's the thing. Because if you somehow manage to hire the wrong blind person for a particular role, see, this is a very sensitive thing because film and acting, it's a very delicate balance. The person has to be just right. They can't be a little bit right. They can't be too much right. They have to be just right. That's the problem. So I think that your intentions are bold. Your intentions are noble, and you're in the right, Jenniffer. The problem that you will have is figuring out so who are the right blind people to hire for this right role, because that's a lot harder to tell the difference, especially if you're only casting, and I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just illustrating a point to basically to play devil's advocate without being the devil. You know, you're kind of almost what I'm saying in a philosophical sense is you're kind of asking for trouble because you're working with a group of people to whom some of them have acting experience, but many don't. And then there would be a variety of skill sets that you would have to then, choose from and work with. And I think that's all wonderful. So, since you have a film company, so how do film companies work when you look at it from a business perspective? What do you know about the business? Basically, what can you tell me about the money behind the film? How does it work?
Well, as is, our company is not actually up and prepared yet, but we are in the
Hmm.
process of putting it together. I will say that. And well, I do understand the importance of putting a person in a role that they are actually proper for. Um, that is one of the things that we definitely consider with all of our films. We do have to do is what can we find that's actually active or would actually work for that role. And to be completely honest, I told my mother, who has a vision problem last year, that she would not be a good fit for one of my films. So I'm even willing to tell mom that she can't fit a role if it doesn't work for her. The
That's
character is
good.
too
That's
young,
good. Yeah.
stuff, it wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, yeah. Or a lot of times I've seen, I mean, even I've heard of roles where they say, it has to be a male, it has to be blind, but then they say, but you have to be able to impersonate a teenager. Well, guess what? I'm 32. I'm not a teenager anymore. So that role is not appropriate for me. It's a very delicate recipe. It's a very delicate thing.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very, very sensitive thing. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That is really, really interesting. So how did you come to form this company in the first place? This film company.
Well, around the time, and actually at this point in time, Chandra can go ahead and chime in if she'd like.
Sure, sure. Here, I tell you what, let's bring her in. Sure thing. Okay, Shay. Okay, Shay, go ahead. It takes the computer, Jennifer, it takes the computer a second.
There we go.
There we
Yep.
go. Okay, Shay. So why
Hello.
don't you go ahead and introduce yourself in one sentence, and then kind of chime in with what we've been talking about. So, what do you think about everything we've said so far? So go right ahead. Yeah.
Oh, my name is Chandra Scheschy, but everyone calls me Shay. I am actually probably the main director of most film productions that me and my friend have done. And the company was a brainchild probably early in like the early 20 teens, I think, if I recall right. I mean, I've been doing film stuff since early 2000s. But the brainchild for the company started forming in the early 20 teens, and then it started really taking off by the time around 2019 came, or 2018, 2019 came around, and we're like, okay, this is what we really want to do. And so we started formulating ideas, and I just, after getting involved with like uh, our association for the blind in Montana, which we call MAB, um, starting to work with nonprofit type stuff and working with people and who are all blind and whatnot, it started getting me thinking that, hey, why not create a business that's going to be more catering to individuals who are blind and other disabilities. Because as growing up myself, going, doing theater and film and music, I was often cast into the back because I was blind. They didn't think I was capable of doing all these things. So like, I understand that feeling. I understand what it's like to be in the background. And I wanted to be like, hey, I'm going to put my best foot forward and make it so that others like myself can actually put their best feet forward in the industry, be it at a small level or a grander level. And that is pretty much the mission and goal of Kryodragon Productions, is to produce quality content that is both entertaining and kind of educational at the same time. Because
Right.
having people who are disabled in the crew and in the cast honestly gives that opportunity to educate other filmmakers who may not be disabled to see what really can be accomplished by disabled community working together.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. Again, like I was just telling Jennifer, if they're cast, my caveat to it is I completely support both of you like 1,000 times over. My caveat is if they're cast in the right way and appropriate way, if they're shown in the right way, it can educate people the right way, because if people with disabilities are cast in films the wrong way, then that actually accomplishes the opposite of what you're trying to accomplish. So
Exactly.
it's a very subtle thing. Let's talk about genre. Okay. I'm gonna go. Yes, Jennifer, you have the floor. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, to chime in on that
Mhm,
last
sure, go ahead. Yeah.
in the right way,
Yeah, right.
that's other reasons that we feel that disabled actually need some of these jobs, because a lot of times there's a lot of representation of disabled people in films and movies and or films and shows and stuff, where the disabled person's played by a sighted person and they get it completely wrong. I've I've done auditions where I've looked at the script and I almost put down the script and did not audition at all because, well, actually, some of them I have turned down because reading the script, they were just so far off base with blind people that it just felt kind of gross how
Mm-hmm.
they were with it. And the fact that the average, most of the time, the disabled people are not being played by disabled people. They're not, there's no disabled person even as a consultant to explain this is how retinitis pigmentosa works, or this is how um, aniridia works, or sticklers, etc. The list
Mm-hmm.
goes. And not even just with blindness, you get it with cerebral palsy, you get it with invisible disabilities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah,
And
go ahead. Shay, do you want to add? Shay, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with her on that. Like, but both of us have gone to do different programs and stuff, and that includes taking on going into acting classes ourselves and taking in you know other forms of classes. Like me, like she was saying, I did film in school. I actually took courses in how to manage a crew and cast and all that stuff, just so I could get the basics down. But we also did go to acting classes so we could get the caveat of the other area where we learn how to do the acting, so we know how to direct and also how to act um, in front of camera or even on stage or even voice acting for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is a shameless plug, but I'm going to put it in there anyway because I am absolutely astounded by her so much. Is Marilee Talkington is probably one of the best acting instructors I have ever had. And she purposefully teaches people who have blindness to act. And she brings in other people to come instruct as well. So there's not just her, but there's multiple people. And her school is an online school. You get to do it over Zoom. I think she's had some in-person stuff, but mostly she's been doing Zoom stuff. And basically, the school is called Access Acting Academy. And it can teach a whole range of different things for whatever people really want to learn. The classes, some of them are free, depending. She does have some free ones once in a while, but the rest of them do cost money. But I will tell you what, totally worth the money put in to the class. She is absolutely phenomenal. And she is a professional actress on television. So if that says anything.
Well, funny you bring up the voice acting because I've done some voice acting in an amateur volunteer sense. So I love voice acting. Yeah. I was telling Jenniffer earlier today over Discord before we set this up that I know of a group of people from all over the world that meet on WhatsApp and they produce audio dramas, and they are a very interesting organization. Now, you wouldn't get paid, but it's still a lot of fun and they produce a lot of interesting stuff. Yeah. Have you ever heard, and they are not in the waiting room, wish they were. Have you ever heard of a Zollyhood? Have you ever heard of One Vision Media? Have you ever heard of that, Shay?
Maybe vaguely, like
Yeah.
in the backgrounds at some point, not like directly, no.
Right.
It does sound interesting.
Right. Yeah. So, and the other question, follow-up question, specific reason why I'm asking, have you ever heard of Aaron's opinion, like before this moment?
I saw you in Discord and I've heard you talking about it in
That
Discord, but
that's true. That's correct, but that's correct. But have you actually spent time it's fine if you haven't, but have you spent time watching my podcast or YouTube channel? Because
no.
I've interviewed several voice actors um over the years. I've interviewed the director, well, of that One Vision Media. Anyway, we'll catch up over Discord, and certainly once you join my communities over on WhatsApp and Facebook, once you guys get into my neck of the woods, into my network, I am more than happy to put you in touch with the smart people that will be able to promote you further. So,
Sounds wonderful. Really.
yeah, yeah. And let's definitely, I definitely would love to interview that Marilee. That person is welcome on this podcast. And I think it would be a great project for the two of you to help Aaron's opinion to get in touch with that person. I would love to learn from her. It sounds like that would be a very deep and fascinating conversation for sure. So let's see what we can do as time goes on to get her on here. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
good story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Jenniffer, by the way, I'm serious about getting that Jeff Thompson on here too. What do we have to do? We're gonna have a conversation. You're gonna have to tell him, hey, Jeff, Aaron's a pig. He just won't stop saying your name. You gotta talk to him. Anyway, more with that. I'll hold you to it. I'm waiting for that text. I'll hold you to it. So let's focus on after I really understand your business, which I do, let's focus on genres. With film,
Okay.
just like podcasting, right? We have a lot of genres of stuff. We have true crime, history. This format that I do, I call it long form interview. Technically, my category is actually education because I'm an educator. But there's a lot of forms and genres of film. So what is your favorite? When you go to watch a movie, what's your favorite genre of movie? And when you go to direct a film that you want to direct, what's your favorite genre to direct?
My genres are actually all over the place.
Good.
I like a lot of I like horror, I like sci-fi, I like fantasy. I do like comedies, all sorts of things, superhero movies. Almost every year that we've done our film challenges, as soon as the genre is announced, I usually immediately start nerding out about just all the different things that can be done with it based off of things I've seen in the similar genre. Like with the superhero genre, I immediately started throwing out everything from X-Men and Black Panther to stuff like Luke Cage, just all sorts of stuff like that. And so it's pretty much the same with almost every other genre too. Sometimes I even get really interested in watching the old classics, you know. I'll I mean, if I had more sight, I'd probably sit around and watch silent films. I
Hmm.
I watching Charlie Chaplin stuff, or at least I did when I had a little more sight.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. What about you, Shay?
Um, for me, I actually I'm mostly big, huge sci-fi and fantasy is my two tops, I think, for genres. But I do have an eclectic ability. Like she said earlier, I worked on doing the student film Vanished, which was kind of a sci-fi horror. Well, at
Hmm.
least if I continued it, it would have been more of a sci-fi horror anyway. And I kind of
Ooh.
actually wish to actually try and redo it and continue it. So basically, it kind of goes all over the place. I would have to say the biggest reason for sci-fi and
Hmm.
fantasy is probably the first time I watched Star Trek and Star Wars, you know. So that kind
Hmm.
of encouraged my ability to go into those genres because, you know, I liked what I saw on TV, even if it was like early 60s to 80s stuff. It was
Absolutely.
amazing.
They're better. Of course, films are better when they were filmed a long time ago. And I know exactly why that is. It's a very simple reason.
I'd love to hear your theory.
It's not a theory, it's a fact. If you look
Okay.
back in the 20th century, people had to actually use their acting skills. They couldn't just rely on technology to build the story. They had to use their skills to build the story. So that's
Absolutely.
why the older the film is, usually it's better because people had to actually act. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically around the same reasoning that I give. Almost the same words, word for word, almost, except for mine is they had to focus on the story. They couldn't.
Well, that's what I said. They had to act. How are those words different from what I just said?
It's literally almost the same thing,
I
except
know,
you.
I know. I'm very sarcastic. Look, here's the thing that both of you need to know. If you guys work with me, I have a huge personality. I'm really weird, and I'm proud of it. And I have a huge sense of humor, and I'm a bit of a character. So you're gonna have some laughs. So that I'm not. I'm not gonna say that I'm not normal. It's just the fact that I'm just not normal. But
And normal's
but
boring.
right, right. I'm definitely not normal, but I consider myself to be very engaged. And I can tell that both of you are very extremely engaged and extremely unusual in a very positive and strong way. Both of you have your you guys have your own flavor, and I like it. It's a very unusual, you guys have a very unusual personality, and I embrace it and want more of it because I can tell that both of you are introverts who really know how this stuff works. Yeah. Yeah, no, I love some great, but don't get me wrong. There are some films that are being made today that still fascinate me to this day. The
Oh
other
yeah.
style too, like sci-fi. I love sci-fi. Um, Also, if there's a good narration style, one of my favorites that I always use for an example, I always love The Giver. That's a great film just because of the way it was filmed and the way that people acted and the narration and just the style of that one. Surely you've seen that one, right?
I think I have. If not, I'll go check it out, and
I
then I'll
don't think I
probably
actually have.
feel like I've seen it.
So, right. So we'll come back to you in a moment. So Shay, do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so, yeah. But I've never seen The Giver, so I'm gonna have to actually, you know, pick that out of the video library of one of my streamings and see it, and check it out.
It's a
But
great
yeah,
film
I
because
do.
because for the two reasons they use narration to tell some of the story. They also use black and white. It's filmed in both black and white and color, which is very beautiful and very intriguing. Of course, you have to have read the book, which I think you had, to remember the whole storyline. But that's a very interesting film that is very realistic and very well done. And it's odd thing to say, but it's one of my favorites, for sure. Yeah.
I'll have
Yeah.
to give it a look.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's a real
Yeah.
but that's a great example of sci-fi and narration. I love films with a lot of dialogue and narration and and a strong sense of storyline too. That's a huge thing.
Wouldn't you say
Yeah.
that's what we try to do, Phoenix? Is that we
Yeah,
we try to put in a lot of storytelling into our movies and stuff that we do, even if they're short
yeah.
film?
And we try and find interesting, new, and unique ways of telling them. Like, uh, she has a lot of the straightforward film classes under her belt, and a lot of my studying in college was more in the experimental music and theater directions and stuff. So I throw out a lot of really weird ideas, like, hey, what if we do an entire short film through the point of view of a blind person by skewing the lens, and you're actually,
Mm.
if you're visually impaired, as if you're that visually impaired person, and weird ideas like that. Not
Ooh,
house, but
there I disagree. There I disagree with you a little because I think that might send the wrong image to the sighted person. See, that's a little strange. That's a little, I don't know about that. But how did that film go? How did that experiment
well,
go?
it didn't actually happen. I just come up with experimental ideas like that.
Right. So how do you tell when an experimental idea needs to not be an idea, but something you actually do? How does that work?
Well, usually in the pre-production process, the first thing we have to look at is the logistics of how would we pull this off if we were going to do it, you know? And for the well, I never made it into like a full film, but I did submit a small piece where it was really experimental and stuff. But I submitted a small piece to the I think it was the ADA Lead on 31 or 32 project. And that one was through the vision of a visually impaired person. And the technicals for that I did, because I do a lot of practical effects, is I took one of those this is how I see cards, and I picked out one of the different vision types that they had on there. It might have been one that had a particular blind spot, I think. And I taped that to the camera lens of my phone. And since it was only like a 2 minute thing, it's not like it had to hold people's attention for too terribly long. But I had the person going through aspects of their life with this lens on, as if, and you were looking at it through the eyes of the person doing these things.
Hmm. Hmm. That's
So, yeah.
that's interesting. I don't perfectly agree with you, only because I think that may send the wrong signal just to a sighted person. But I do understand that is very creative. Right. Right.
Yeah. And that's where my thing, the whole experimental thing. But I have other experimental methods that I do that are more successful and useful. Like at one point, we were filming a person's musical that they had made while in college, and we started out with a film crew of five of us. Two of us were holding the boom mics, and three people were running cameras on the first day. But the second day of filming, we we weren't able to have one of the boom mic operators, and one of the camera people wasn't able to do their part. And so, well, you didn't really need boom mic holders if you had a stand that they could go in, but we didn't have that. So I duct taped the boom mics to the to like a couple stair railings, and then I just sat halfway in between in the audience and ran both Olympus recorders at the same time. So sometimes the experiments work.
Right. Definitely. That is very, very interesting. So you also mentioned um you also mentioned that you're submitting your film, or there's some sort of project that's coming up, spring project that's coming up or something. Can you expand on that?
Yes. Every spring, there's this. film competition called the Easterseals Disability Film Challenge. And what it is they they pre-choose a genre and themes for you to work with, and there's a select amount of props that you have that you're required to use just to make sure you do film the film in that required amount of time. But you have 1 week to make a short film about 5 minutes long for the film, no more than 5 minutes. It could be as short as 1 minute. And the credits can only last for an additional minute. And you have to stay on the genre with the theme, include the props. And the biggest rule of this is that you must have at least one disabled person in front of or behind the camera for each of these films. And it's a worldwide competition. This is our fourth year, I think, going into it, right, Shay?
Yes, because we did like three other films already in the last couple of years. Mockumentary, superhero, and romance. So this year's theme is supposed to be buddy comedy, which I'm not great with comedy as much as per se Phoenix is. So I've given Phoenix the reins to actually go, okay, you're doing this. I'm just going to sit back and kind of help give, opinions. And then in the end of the product, I'll edit it up and load it up to the software that needs to be loaded to. So she's really good though at comedies. She's 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 got that kind of charisma that I don't know if I really could possess. So
Right, right, absolutely. So with the film having a max of only 5 minutes, so then what are you able to do? How are you able to spend the 5 minutes? How does that work?
Um, well, generally you can tell whatever story you can tell in 5 minutes as long as it fits the other criteria. Like during the mockumentary year, we decided that this was in 2021, and I knew a lot of people that were just having so much trouble with their service dogs, not having been able to socialize during lockdown and stuff like that. And the uh the 6 feet away thing kind of, well, you can't really teach that to a dog very easily without retraining them. And so this was really difficult on the service animals. And we wanted to tell those stories because not a lot of people knew that. And well, it ended up being a lot more silly and stuff than we intended, but that was the original story we had in mind. So it ended up being about two people with service dogs and a person with I guess a service cat. and
Okay.
and well, it was about how the people and their service dogs are kind of in a state of decline. We used the bad, worse, worst concept from theater. So Chandra and her guide dog, they were bad. She was imagining her dog to be this secret agent, and my dog was going through an identity crisis in the sense that, well, we put him into a unicorn costume and implied that the dog was running around thinking they were a unicorn, and I'm like, I don't know where they get it from. And I start doing this Matrix spoof where I think I don't know, Neo from the Matrix or something. And then the cat one, it was basically a lady who was in love with her cat, I think, or something. And then we had three people who were pretending to be experts on the subject. We had a cat trainer, a cat psychic, and a vet. The vet was the one that was the least. The pet psychic, I think, was kind of in the middle, and the pet trainer was really silly. But then the other two movies we made, last year and the year before, I think they fell a little closer to what we wanted. Um, the uh, the superhero one we did, because we only had 5 minutes and, well, not a lot of money in our budget for graphics and such, we decided we would do a reality TV show, but with superheroes. And it was sort of like a spoof of the real world show from the 90s, and but with like superheroes living together. And it was supposed to be implied that it was a series, and so you had the characters arriving in the house basically, and getting to know each other. And then for the third year, that one was the most challenging because we wanted to do the 10-year reunion thing with a romance. And so for that one, we did a story where it was about this three-part rock band who were in high school or college. They had this garage band, and the lead singer and lead guitarist ended up dating, but then uh, due to unseen events, because we only had 5 minutes, um, they ended up breaking up, and the band gets back together 10 years later, and they have to maneuver through the awkward reunion.
That's a very, very interesting concept. Hmm. And apart from the prestige of winning this competition, like how does the competition really work and what would happen if you win? Like what's then what happens if you win it?
Shay, do you want to take this one?
Well, they have specific prizes and stuff that come with it. Like they often will have scholarships and gear like computers and software and stuff like Adobe, um, whatnot, that they actually will give to the winners who who've participated in this. And I'm not sure because we haven't won one yet, but I think it goes to like everyone who's in the group, or goes specifically to the person who did that, who got the award, like depending on if it was like the director or if it was the editor, um that sort of thing. It would go to that specific person, but
That's correct.
I can't remember off the top
That
of my
sounds about right. Yeah, it would probably
So
go to the director. Yeah. Hmm.
it goes to the specific person for that specific award. The writer goes to the top named to the top writer of the project, director to the top director, um, actor, top actor, so on and so forth. The awareness one, I think it's the awareness part of the challenge for the publicity angle. I think it goes to the person in the group who did the most with the media, getting people views and stuff like that. And so, yeah.
Right, right. Well, that's extremely, extremely interesting. So yeah. So and then how do you actually put together this film? Do you obviously you all have to meet up to film it. So how does that work? How do the logistics of all this work?
Well, uh, meeting up is not as in person is not as much necessary as it could be. The first project we had about, I think, yeah, there was 7 of us across 3 different countries, and those of us that were in the US were strung upon 3 different time zones. So it was a challenge, but we met over Zoom a few times beforehand to throw out ideas we had and stuff like that. But the official script writing doesn't start until that first Tuesday when they give out the themes and props. The genre is given about a month or a couple months in advance, so you have something to think about. But then once you get the props and the themes and stuff, you can fully flush out your script and get to work on everything else. And you've got about 5, 6, 7 days to bring it all from writing to last edit to put it together. But the previous two films we did. Those ones we decided, okay, the Zoom thing was really difficult to do. So we want to see what we can put together with just us in one room and see what that ends up looking like. And so those ones were easier from a certain area because, well, we were all in the same room. But of course, they were harder because we had a smaller group of people working on it. It was kind of nicer though because we had a smaller cast of people, and sometimes working with people that you're not as used to, you have to work your way around the egos and stuff like that. Sometimes the problem with working with seven people who are all most notably actors is they all want to act, and that'd be fine if it wasn't a 5 minute project because that's less than a minute per person.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that is very, very interesting. Yeah. Wow. Well, three different countries. Wow. So how did you and all these other people that you came across, how did you come across these people? Was it simply through your network, or how did you find these people for this project?
That one was Access Acting Academy, actually, that very first one. We met with other blind people. We were pretty much an all blind group that year.
Yep.
Okay. Well, good. Well, very extremely, extremely interesting. So I hope in your description, I hope you both can provide a detailed description for this project and the company and like how it all, how it all works. I think that will be very, very, very helpful to the listener and things like that. So yeah, that's all very, very interesting. What would be some of your future goals or future dreams that you have for your interest in film?
Well, one thing I would like to do is I would like to actually get the chance to do something that's more in the fantasy area because that's one of the genres I haven't had a chance to tackle yet, and I think it'd be kind of cool to do so. I also would like to try and do a horror film. I've got one that kind of in the process of script writing, and it's more kind of psychological thriller than horror, but
Mm-hmm.
but I do like the idea of being able to play around with that stuff and being able to play around with more stage makeup and stuff like that, and just really trying all sorts of new things I haven't tried yet with film and telling unique and interesting stories, pretty much.
Yeah, I definitely agree that for me, thrillers are always my favorite genre. Kind of a realistic horror, a horror based on something that could actually happen. Those are always my favorite. Yeah, but also a very good science fiction too. That's also very, very good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Extremely, extremely interesting. What about you, Shay? What are some of your future
Well,
goals for film? Hmm.
my future goals as far as doing filming, I'm kind of with Phoenix on this, is that, I really like to dig my hands into a good fantasy, because, that's my bread and butter. I love fantasy. So, and
What
I
is
love
it
that.
about, right? But what is it about, if you didn't mind my interjection there, what is it about fantasy? I just want to pull this out of you. What is it about fantasy that interests you? What is fantasy? Why is it so interesting to both of you? Yeah, go ahead, Shay.
I think it's because the fact that you can pretty much come up with anything within fantasy. You can make up an entire world, and you know it just be your own. And I guess the depth of lore that comes with creating worlds like that, I mean, I grew up reading things like Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings, and you know Wheel of Time, and all those other kinds of big chunky books, those big reads that just really engaged me, growing up, especially, you know, I think high school was my point when it really hit me that I loved fantasy, because the first fantasy book I ever read was The Hobbit.
Hmm.
And I was required reading. So I'm like, you know, if I'm liking this, well, I want to be able to, you know, do this
Sure.
art. And I don't know, I like elves and dwarves and fairies and dragons, lots of dragons, you know. Um, and it's just one of those genres that I know is really difficult to tackle, because there's between, you know, doing it either with practical effects or CGI, it takes a lot of work. And I'm all for getting down into the dirt and getting dirty over it and just doing it, you know, wanting to be able to make really complex things come to life. I don't know. You know, same thing goes with sci-fi for me, I think, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally understand your point. I would say, to make your point even stronger, that the reason why I don't really like fantasy really as much is for the simple philosophical reason that nothing is more interesting and nothing is crazier and nothing is scarier than the reality of the life that we live. You know, that's why I think thrillers are actually the most interesting, because they have, you know, our lives have elements of fantasy. Our lives have elements of all these things. You know, that's life, you know.
Yeah.
But when I watch a good film, it has to be a thriller where, you know, there's some elements of horror, some elements of adventure, and then some elements of mystery and believability. You know, that's kind of my thing. But you're very right. I do understand where someone would be attracted to fantasy, to escape in a philosophical way from the reality to which we live. But you know, nothing is scarier than the truth, you know, which is why I love films that are about true things and things that are. But I don't know. That's just me. What do you think, Phoenix?
Well, I can definitely see both sides of the coin, actually, because, you know, I mean, I do love me some true crime stuff and getting down into the psychological aspects of how people tick and stuff like that. But
Hmm.
sometimes I just want to see Legolas taking on some orcs or whatever, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I totally get it. Totally get it. So, where have another interesting question that's always interesting to think about? You know, I've traveled all over the world. You know, I'm a by the way, I'm a bilingual person. I hope that both of you are bilingual too.
I
I
wish
speak. You what?
I,
What's that, Phoenix?
I wish I was. I kind of struggle with other languages. I was never good at that part of school.
Yeah,
Okay, understood.
that was definitely one of my downfalls in school. I tried taking Spanish more than once, and I don't know, I think it was just being taught wrong to me, I suppose, because of being visually impaired.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
Well, you know, for me, you know, as someone who speaks French now, like, you know, fluently, relatively, as French is my second language, I also thought that. I thought that French was being taught wrong. But what it was I needed to go to France and talk to other French people. And then I discovered that how much I enjoy it. So that's kind of the trick with that. Yeah. Have you worked with anyone, you know, from another country, or have you traveled to other countries where you see the way people live? Because surely that would, um, in many ways, that would impact your ability to produce film if you see the way people live in other countries.
I have not gotten the chance. I don't think either of us have, because, you know, money's tight, you know. Um,
Okay. Understood.
but the one time that I have gotten to go overseas, I was really young. And, you know, as a child, you're more interested in playing than you are learning about other cultures, really. So, I mean, I enjoyed going and seeing all the stuff, but I really did not focus a lot on, you know, interacting with people,
Hmm.
because I was with family and I was a kid. So,
Hmm.
if I went now, like, let's just say money wasn't an issue, if I could go and actually do this stuff, I totally would go all across Europe. I think both Phoenix and I would do it together. We just go over there and have fun and learn about all the different cultures and talk to the different people and all that stuff. Right, Phoenix?
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I haven't had the ability to travel to other places either. And so my ability for traveling not being able to be had, my version is watching documentaries and other things like that, where I can where I can learn about the histories of places and reading books and stuff like that. And if I get the opportunity to talk to other people, I love to engage them in conversation about where they're from and what kinds of food they like and all sorts of things like that. One of the people that we did our film project with in 2021, the mockumentary one, he was actually from India, and I talk with him occasionally, and he's pretty awesome. I try and get to know him as much as possible and his culture, but we both have very busy schedules.
Yeah, you mentioned him to me. We should get him on the show too, right?
Yeah, Shashank, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great name. That's a great name for an actor or any that's just a great name. That's already starting off very good with a great name like that. That's cool. Yeah.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah,
And
let's get in touch with him. Yeah.
I did want to go to, when I was in college, I almost
Hmm.
opportunity to take a semester or take a class for a semester where at the end I'd get to go to Ireland for a couple of weeks. But I ended up with some health problems, so I had to take that semester off instead and deal with those health problems, which was too bad because going to Ireland would have been awesome. I also tried to learn Gaelic around that time, which was a fail because Gaelic is apparently a very difficult to learn language.
Right, right. Well, that's very fascinating. Yeah, here at Aaron's Opinion, we've spoken to at least two Irish people, and they both can speak their ancient language a little, but nowadays in Ireland, a lot of people forgot it now. So that
Yeah,
language is fading out. But the old people can still speak it. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, that's a problem that they have quite a bit there. I remember when I was in Irish drama class, they showed this short film about this guy who traveled from China. He really wanted to go to Ireland, and he learned Gaelic and everything. And he went there, and he was trying to talk to all the people, and n- barely any of them knew Gaelic. And one person's like, I don't speak Chinese," and he was so disappointed.
I see. Well,
I don't
that's
know what the film was though.
that's all extremely, extremely interesting. So, we're coming to the end of a wonderful conversation with both of you. I do have a couple questions, which are
Okay.
this. So, Phoenix, you don't know me very well, which is very good because now you can ask a very good question. If you can ask Aaron Richmond and Aaron's opinion only one more question to really make me sweat, to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you want to know?
Okay, let's see. Any question? Hmm. How about, okay, if you were to say that you had a theme song for your life that was just that song encompasses all of you, what would your theme song be?
Ooh, that's a great question. And I don't have a good answer. I don't really know. I love a lot of classical music. My music tastes are kind of all over the place. So because my music, my film tastes are pretty direct. See, I kind of gave the wrong impression because I said that I mostly watch sci-fi and thrillers, which is true, but my music is a little bit more around um more all over the place. But of course, it depends on my mood, which makes it a very hard question to actually answer. But one of my favorite classical pieces that I think is actually um, a very powerful song and a very unusual song and um, a very beautiful song. Even though that when I played an instrument in schooling, I was a flutist. I always played the flute, classical flute, my life. I still was always impressed by Beethoven's Emperor Concerto for piano and orchestra. That is one of my favorite pieces ever written. And actually, I still think I'm sure you know what it is, right?
Yes, that's a good one.
It's an incredible, I gotta say, and this goes with acting in film too, when something is perfectly written, whether it's the Emperor Concerto written hundreds of years ago or a film that you're working on, if it's perfect forever. And I mean it. So yeah.
Yes.
So something like that. But that's a very interesting, that's a beautiful question. I loved that. Shay, you are not off the hook. Go. The question
Okay.
that you want to ask me to really make me sweat, go.
Let's see. Uh, how am I gonna beat Phoenix's question? That was
That was a
really
good one. That was a great
yeah.
question, Phoenix.
Um, oh, let's see.
Of course, I can kind of cheat my own question and tell you that I can kind of gear the question to something that I want to answer. Okay, here, let me force the question. This is something I learned in acting school. Let me force the question and force you to ask me.
Okay.
Wait, this is going to be this is some interesting. I'm coming up with some interesting. I have a lot of material, just like you guys. Trust me, I got all sorts of strange material. Um, okay. Oh wait. Actually, I think I forgot. Okay, I want you to ask me a question. I still want you to ask me a question to make me sweat, though. But I want it to be sort of geared in the philosophical sense of acting, probably because I want to talk about it.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
Just Shay.
all right. So if you could play any character in film or TV,
Mm-hmm.
what type of character or what character would you play?
Well, so glad you asked. I want to take this time and say that I would be honored because you were just about to ask it. You were too nervous to ask it. But in case you want to ask it in the future, you don't have to because I'm going to tell you. I, Aaron Richmond, love what you guys do here at Aaron's Opinion, and I would be honored. From the bottom of my heart to yours, I would be honored to be involved in any type of production that you two are working on in any minor way that I possibly could. I'm deeply fascinated by it in every way possible, from the behind the scenes. Personally, this is going to sound weird. I actually think behind the scenes stuff is more interesting than being in front of the camera. I really do. I think the behind the scenes, the secret things that go on secretly are actually more interesting for me. But that's just me. I'm pretty weird. Okay. But I'm also very comfortable being in front of the camera like I am now and things like that. And I believe, I mean this in the greatest sense of truth, reality, and philosophy, that I believe that for us to do these things like coming to podcasts and putting together these films, we're all kind of acting. I mean, life is an act. So keep acting. I actually interviewed, now I'm sure you've heard of the Voiceover Network, right?
Yes.
I've actually interviewed them
No.
here on air. Yeah, I've interviewed them before.
Wow.
And I actually spoke. Now I'm going to have to go back to that episode and remind myself, but I spoke with a woman over the pond in England named Rachel. And I remember that interview well um, because I actually didn't know that she was going to be in the interview. It's kind of the type of thing, just like anything else. It's the type of thing where I'll have to send you that video. Um, or even try to find it on Apple if it's still in this feed. Anyway, it's definitely on my YouTube. I'll send you that. But I was asking them sort of the same question because I'm hinting to the fact that I'm curious about getting involved in this in some way. And I asked them the opposite question that you asked. I said, "So what role would you see me playing if you hear the way I talk?" And they said that it's the greatest compliment to anyone who wants to get into acting. But they said, "Aaron, you will either be a villain or you'll be a hero, but nothing in between." They said, "With my voice, it's a villain voice or a hero voice or an authority voice. So either I'm the person in a true crime, I would play the character that does something god awful to somebody, or I would play like the judge or the authority figure."
I could see that. I
I can
really
ask see that.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
far as the technical backstage crew job, the one I can most see you on off the top of my head, audio describer.
Yep.
Perfect.
Describer. Yeah.
In other words, doing voiceover, which I've already done, voicing something.
Basically doing what you
Exactly.
do best.
So me using, I'm all for it. I love using my voice. Quite frankly, I really do believe at some imaginary level, I don't know if it's true or not, but I do believe that, not everybody has a voice to be an actor or a podcaster. And I think that there have been a lot of things in my own life that I haven't really gotten my way with, but one of them is that God apparently gave me a voice and I really want to use it. And I only want to use my voice to be helpful and to truly help you and help people who are doing the right thing. So thank you. Thank you to both of you. So of course we'll put a description in the bottom here, but if both of you or if someone wants to get in touch with your company and you guys, how would they go about doing that?
Well, they actually can reach out to us. I do have a email that they can reach out to. Let me grab it here really quick. It is Kryodragon Productions at gmail.com. And they can email us through there if they have questions or concerns, or if they're interested in, helping out or participating. That's KRYODRAGON Productions at gmail.com.
Click the link in the description. All right, everybody. Well, is there since I usually, by the way, I usually don't record with, by the way, I just want to say thank you to both of you for contributing. I also want to be overly clear. I don't always record. Most of my episodes are not three-way conversations like this. So this is always an unusual flavor and a very rewarding flavor. So I think it was very appropriate to have both of you on the call. It's not something I do every day usually I'm just one-on-one, only because I think that it's, easier for people to pay attention and focus. But both of you totally brought your A game, and I really, really, really appreciate both of you for joining me. So I think it was a well worth the episode, as all of them are. Absolutely. So
Yes.
I only have.
Thank you for having us.
Both of you are forever welcome, and we will definitely keep talking over on the Discord, as we call it. So do either one of you know how I end an episode? Because I have a special slogan that I use here at Aaron's Opinion.
I have actually not made it to the end of any of them yet.
Well, that's okay.
With them, I've gotten halfway through some of them. I'm almost done with the space one.
Oh, that's a wonder. She's wonderful.
She's wonderful. Yeah.
Okay. And what about you, Shay? Do you know? I don't think you would know, but do you know how I end an episode? No problem.
But now that I've been introduced to this, I will probably go and sit down and listen to some of these.
All right. Well, you trust me when I say you haven't lost me that easily. Don't worry. There's follow up. I don't just disappear like some people. I'm right on your tail. So I think you'll have a harder time getting rid of me, quite frankly, and I mean that in the best way possible. But we say thank you, Shay. Thank you, Phoenix, Jenniffer. Thank you to both of you. I want to one more time wish you the absolute best of luck with all of your productions moving forward. I definitely say action. Go for it. You two are doing great. Help one person today. Help 1 million people tomorrow. For those of you who are still survivors on YouTube, welcome to the end. As we say, thank you for joining us. Remember, click the link in the description for more info. And we know that Jenniffer and Shay, Phoenix and Shay, are now forever members of the Aaron's Opinion family. So
I love that slogan.
So thank you. Well, very good. Well, thank you. And so thank you for joining us. I'll be in touch over on Discord, and we'll keep in touch there initially. So
definitely
go ahead.
Poke me. I'm around usually, so.
Well, you sent me a DM, so it'll be easy for me to put you two in a group chat, and then we can communicate as the three of us moving forward from there. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can invite you. I can invite you to the Kryodragon Productions Discord as well. So
Yes, please. Erin's opinion I would love to be on that thing. Go
because
for it.
then we can have you on as a contributor or a collaborator, and build up our family that way as well.
I would love to, and especially if it's about me doing my voiceover, using my voice to announce things or talk, especially if it involves talking. Get me to talk. I'll talk.
Yes.
Okay.
Come over and give Erin's opinion.
Yes.
Right.
Pun.
All right. All right, everybody. Well, let's take a break from this for a moment, go do some other stuff, and we'll catch up later on the Discord. All right. So sounds good. All right, everybody on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, tickle the bell notification to know when we go live next on YouTube. Comment below. Nobody comments below. I don't know what's so scary about that. Like the video. That could also help. You never know. Share the video. That could also help. You never know. And thanks so much. We'll be back soon. Have a good night, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you end up watching this. So take care, everybody. We'll be back soon. Stay safe, stay healthy, keep podcasting.